Hello, my name is Nathan Wells. Welcome and thanks for joining me today. Excited to be talking a little bit more about content creation. So this session is focused on content creation, a few specific areas that we get questions about and see changes happening with AI, with large language models in these industries. So we're excited to talk about innovative creation. And content creation goes a lot of different directions, but we're going to focus on a couple of those. Is a little different than any of them that I've done lately. So we know that large language models, and when I use that term, when you see LLM on the slide, we're talking about this evolution that AI has gone through, and we'll look at this a little bit more in the history of AI in a little bit. But this idea that now we can use natural language to ideate with a large language model and get something in return in natural language. And we can use natural language using conversational, the way I'm speaking right now, how I would normally type an email, how I would normally message a friend, right? We can use that type of language and get an amazing result. Something unique I did for this presentation, I haven't quite done to this extent before, so I said, okay, we're doing this presentation, we're doing this session on content creation with AI. I'm going to let AI build the content. So literally everything you're seeing, with some tweaks, of course. Anytime we use AI, we need to be the human in the room. We need to go through and double check things and spot check and reference check and add in content and whatnot. But everything in this presentation was created by AI. I changed some text and I made some text bigger. I double checked some facts and took out a couple of things and redid. But this is AI created. I think that's important. I felt like, because this session is on content creation, and I'll show you the two tools I used here in a moment. This isn't necessarily a tool session, but I think it's important to know where it comes from. So one of the things we need to understand is how can you apply this content creation? So this one specifically, this first few examples, is around marketing. When I say marketing, this is every industry does marketing. I come from education. I was a 7th grade middle school teacher, taught history. Then I was a tech coach, worked in a district office for a number of years in Central Phoenix, Arizona, coordinating education technology across the district. So I worked with IT, but I worked with curriculum and how do those work together and how technology support those. We did a lot of marketing with that. We did marketing to families about what they need to know, what was coming home, why it was important, why they should attend family nights, why they should support the curriculum in the district. We did marketing to the teachers, especially when I was in the district office. We would market why this thing is important to them, why they're going to use this and want to use this in their classroom. And then, of course, any other industry. Now I work on the other side of it, if you will. I work for a company, a business. We do marketing. Any business you can think of does some form of marketing. And large language models, this form of AI, can really help by personalizing content. We talk about that in education too, but personalizing ads, we actually are getting fed personalized content all the time. And based on our search history, AI has been doing that for a long time. Now with large language models, though, somebody that's working on marketing messaging can do really quick ad copy, meaning they can say, I need to market people with this demographic, with this type of content, with this, build a campaign for me. And a large language model can help put that together, at least the skeleton outline, maybe some example pictures and ideas. Also, market trends. So looking at data for analysis and looking across all these different places. So how did we get here? So we saw these transformers built, and a transformer is really what takes all the data, all the information you're inputting, and makes it come together. So without the transformers, we couldn't have the large language models we do today. We saw more adoption going across industries, but it was really in 2022 when we saw OpenAI release ChatGPT to the public as an experiment that really we saw it like explode and take off, and now it's been integrated into so many tools, so many areas of our lives across the board. So when we think about marketing, we're going to think about a couple of things. Now, the tool I'm using for these slides is Canva. And Canva, I do have a pro account. Educators can sign up for a free educator account and get the pro for free. And in this, I gave it a prompt. I said, this is my webinar topic. I basically just gave it the tagline for what you registered for this webinar. And it created this presentation. Now, you notice I just went from blue to white and pink. It actually gave me multiple choices, and I went through and grabbed slides that I liked to put them in here. Normally, when I'm putting together a training deck, I would want it to be uniform. I would want it to look at the same across, but I thought for our purposes, thinking about AI as content creation, I would leave it and just show you kind of what came together and how it looked and what Canva created. Now, I will also point out that PowerPoint, I asked it to do the same thing. And again, I have a pro account for Copilot, Microsoft Copilot. And you can see it came up with some good content. I actually preferred the text content PowerPoint gave me. The design is hideous, in my opinion, right? Canva is beautiful, but that's what it does. Canva is a design app. Microsoft Copilot does a really good job with content, giving you the meat because it goes and searches the web and it pulls in relevant data and really puts together. So the content and how it's split up, I actually really appreciated. And I actually just grabbed a couple little wording things from here and used it in the Canva side because I thought it did a much better job with explaining some of these pieces and how they come together. It uses stock images. So that's something when you're thinking about content creation, are you creating pictures from scratch? Are you creating text from scratch? Or are you pulling it from somewhere? And PowerPoint, for instance, pulled all of its image from stock images that it partners with on Bing web browser is where that's coming from. Canva does the same thing. So these little background elements, like the pink squiggly on this slide, is actually an element from a presentation template, I was trying to think of the right words, in the Canva library. But the text, it generated based on large language model. So, and helpful to know. I've mentioned some of these things. Again, I grabbed some different slides, but I thought it was good to think about that tailored experience, creating marketing plans. And this can go across project management in general. No matter what kind of project you're working on, AI has gotten really good at breaking down tasks. I asked ChatGPT the other day to help me plan out a project I have coming up and what are things I should look out for and what should I plan for in this amount of time. And so it actually gave me a backwards design of 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 days, etc., and broke down some different tasks. I didn't take it as is, but it helped to kind of see it all at once. And another important thing I've been finding more and more, and actually read a couple articles about recently, telling the large language model what your output should be, meaning how it should look, the structure of your output. So in this instance, I told ChatGPT I wanted it as a table, linear from first task to last task. So it's important to frame that and what you're wanting as the outcome. Canva, for instance, just for this presentation example I was talking through, you can't give that much information. So Canva uses a large language model on the back end to pull in the text and to find the right things in its elements library, but you can't do a really long prompt to get the fine details you want, whereas PowerPoint with Copilot, you can. So that's something else I would throw in there is with this presentation, I could only give, I think I ended up using 8 words, 9 words. And if I tried to use a couple of sentences, it said it couldn't do it. So I actually don't know the text limit. I haven't tried. I thought that was interesting. So I talked about predictive analytics. We can use that across industries, enhancing the experience. I'm working with a school right now in higher ed that is actually wanting to create chatbots and virtual assistants for different departments. So HR style chatbots where an staff member could say, I'm looking for this, and they get the information they want. We're building one actually as a training one. So we're putting together a video series to train people on how to use, and then some other PDFs and websites and other context, and then putting a chatbot on top of that, a Copilot agent, on top of all that information, that it's only going to search that repository of videos, PDFs, web pages, etc., and then be able to get that information to the person that's looking for it. So I think we're going to start seeing more and more of those agent-style chatbots that are looking at a repository of information and give you that. We see it in sales, like marketing, sales websites all the time. Anytime you've been on Amazon, anytime you go to a website and it's got a little thing on the corner that you can click on and say, ask questions, or how can I help you, right? Anything like that. I just realized the other day, a lot of car dealerships have that. I didn't know that was a thing. Sometimes it's a live person, but a lot of times it starts as a chat bot that has a repository it's pulling information from. Not all of those are tied to AI, but they use an AI, at least for the searching part. Let me rephrase that. Not all of those are tied to a large language model, but they're using AI for search and pulling out the best contextual information. Ethical considerations. So anytime we're producing content, we need to think about where that content is coming from. So one of the beautiful things about AI is it's large language models in particular, is it's pulling from all these different sources that would take me hours, if not forever, to research, right? I made some things come up through the large language model I would never find on my own, would never be able to come to. And so the AI, the large language model, is able to pull all that information, but we need to know where the information is coming from. One of the things I've been seeing talked about a bit more is, how do we double check what the AI is giving us? And luckily, Copilot, ChatGPT Pro, Gemini, the paid version, some of these others are starting to do a better job at citing the source that it's coming from. Copilot's been that way since it came out, luckily, and I've always really appreciated that. But it actually doesn't answer all the questions. It'll give you the 2, 3, 4 websites that it got that information from, and you can go and check those. But sometimes the text, the statistics, the words it uses aren't exactly on that website. So something I saw somebody do the other day is they took what, in this instance, ChatGPT gave them, and it had some things in there that they wanted to really double check, right? They then took that and did an internet search and found different places that that information came from. They also dropped it into Perplexity. If you're not familiar with, that is a large language model that's based for searching. ChatGPT, Gemini, Copilot are not a search engine, right? They're a large language model to help you work on things. You can use it for somewhat searching and for general information, but it's not a search engine. Perplexity is built to be a search engine that uses a large language model. So they dropped it into Perplexity, and Perplexity was able to bring out a few things of where that data could have come from. So why is that important? I think it's important because we need to know, is there bias in here? Is it only pulling from these types of sources? Is it only pointing out these types of people? If you think about image generation, there was some really good examples of every time you ask an image creator, it doesn't matter which one right now, to create a picture of a CEO presenting. It's always a white middle-aged male, right? So as we think about that bias of, why isn't there ladies in that? Why aren't there more minorities in that? It's because of the data it's trained on. So we need to be really transparent then about where we're getting those images from, where we're getting the statistics from. When ChatGPT first came out, a lot of people were like, do you really need to cite your source? Like, you put in the prompt. Well, now we're seeing more MLA style, Chicago style, all of these style guides that most people turn to for how to cite a source correctly, kind of what is expectation for properly put together reports and papers, are now saying you need to cite, I found this, or I got this information from ChatGPT on, what's today, March 11th at 4:15 p.m. Like, be really specific because we know the data is changing all the time. We know the AIs are being updated all the time. And we need to be able to look back and say, like, this is where I got it and this is when. Therefore, we need to double check it, or there might be updates, et cetera. So I thought that was important to point out. When we are looking at using a large language model, it's always important, and I know this one says marketing on the slide, but it goes to any group that we're working with of what are our objectives. Why are we turning to AI? What do we want the AI to do? What is the large language model, ChatGPT, Gemini, Copilot, Claude, whatever it is? What are we hoping it can accomplish for us and support us with? And then make sure that we have the right tool for that. And then, of course, as I said, analyze it, make sure it's appropriate, always start small. I want to point out two things. So this one, the AI, in this case, this was from Canva, is it created a case study. But if you notice, there's nothing specific here. There's no cited source. Now, you may want to argue that Canva was just giving me a placeholder of where I could have put this information. But I thought it was really interesting to kind of read this, like a brand did this and they had an amazing increase. And so it's one of those that somebody could have just left this here and not said, hey, Canva created. They could have just said, hey, we have this great story. So I think it's important to point out that, the AI is going to give you some really good sounding stuff. They're going to write poems for you. They're going to write song lyrics for you. It's really good at writing really good content. And so we need to be aware of what that is and be honest and open about where it's coming from. So that way we keep things above board. There was a 2 years ago now, I think it was, there was a story where this lawyer, I think it was two lawyers, took a case to trial. And while they had to, I'm not a lawyer, but from what I understand is before you can take your case to trial, you submit documents, you submit things, why it should go to trial, et cetera. I don't know all the details. But the papers that they submitted were, a lot of it was quoting prior cases, which I understand is a big deal. So if a case has been decided this way in the past, a judge is more likely to go towards that direction. Well, come to find out, all of their research and material had been created with AI, and the AI made up case history. It was quoting cases that never existed. And so, of course, they got lots of trouble. The case was thrown out, and they lost their license or got at least on probation or something. So we have to be really careful. Like, we have to do what we call lateral reading. What are the sources we know, and what are other sources we can check to make sure that this is appropriate and that this is correct? So that's really important. So we talked a little bit about education. Education, there's a lot of things we can do with AI. And specifically around content creation, one of my favorite things that I've been seeing with AI is that adaptive learning idea. So I can create content for my students in a matter of minutes versus hours, and be able to hit all these different points and all these different learning styles and levels, instead of everybody having to go to the middle, right? Meaning not the highest flying, not the lowest ones that need support, but I can aim at all of them, or at least a majority of them, a lot easier, and produce content for them. One of the easiest things I've done is in Copilot, ChatGPT, going in and saying, level this text to. So let's say I have a student in my class that reads at a 7th grade reading level, a student that reads at a 5th grade reading level, and some students that need something more on a 2nd grade reading level. I can drop that text in, whether it's a PDF, a Word document, even a picture, and I can say level this text, and I can get multiple versions of the same text. That's huge for our kids that are struggling readers or are needing to have some other things to help them. And of course, data, we can help analyze data quickly, go over things quickly, and be able to find trends, find groups that we need to support faster, which is all really helpful. So I mentioned some of this. AI tutors, I think, is already becoming an important thing. Conmigo, which is a part of Khan Academy, is a tutor app, tutor bot that is pretty good. It really adjusts to what the students are learning and what they're asking questions about and questions they're struggling with, and being able to help them find things. And there's other examples as well. That's just one I know. Khan Academy is pretty well known. And then, of course, looking at insights, my former district, our superintendent was always asking, what does the data say? How can we see data better and faster so that way we can make informed decisions that are going to be the most good for the most people in our district? And now with AI, we can look at that data warehouse. We can look at that huge amounts of data we have for 50,000+ students and say, okay, here's our gaps. Here's where we need to act. Here's a school that's struggling. Here's a demographic of students that needs this or that, and be able to make those decisions a lot faster and just have it surfaced a lot easier, which is amazing, which is really cool. So this is just another example of check your statistics. I have no idea where these statistics came from. And again, you could argue that Canva was just giving me a placeholder, but I thought it was really interesting that it posed 75% enhanced learning outcomes, 50% increased work efficiency. The work efficiency one I could probably actually argue, but what learning outcomes? Where is this coming from? So I think it's important to point out, Canva created this for me. It's nice, it looks great, it sounds great, but where is that data coming from? So we need to laterally read. So I left this one as is because I wanted to make that point. The last couple of slides, I tweaked some words and brought some things in. We changed the backgrounds even to match, but this one I wanted to leave, which I thought was interesting. Okay, so another section, Canva helps me create. It's beautiful, right? I couldn't have designed this so nicely, but I did change some of the text here. But I think it's important to remember AI is a part of what we're doing already. And sometimes we look at, I know educators I've spoken with, some industry folks I've spoken with. I have a friend who's in real estate and thinking about what this means for their industry. They're a little bit scared, right? What is this going to take away? And instead, we need to realize we've been using it. It's a part of what we're doing already. It is a part of the things we've been doing. So how do we use those to our advantage? Now, there is a reality that there are jobs that are now, currently, and will be displaced. Every time there's been a technological improvement, there's been job displacement. Every time. You look throughout history, back to the printing press, even before that. Every time there's a major technological innovation, jobs are displaced, but it also creates jobs. So what are those jobs that we need to be focusing on and thinking about preparing for and supporting, specifically coming from an educator and what I'm used to talking about? How do we prepare our students for that? But also all of us that are in industry now, what is happening in our job that we currently do that AI could make better? It's how do I get better with it? But then B, that really AI could replace. And so is there other areas I need to be focusing on and developing, getting better at, understanding, that kind of stuff, which is important. And then, we talked a little bit about this as I've been going already, but AI has amazing possibilities, but we need to be thinking about how we're protecting our data. So every time you put information into ChatGPT, Copilot, Gemini, etc., that data is being stored. And so what are we putting in there? How are we being safe with our data that we share? Being transparent about where we've gotten information, but also asking the AI companies to be transparent and holding them accountable to that. And read the fine print. There's an app that recently some educator friends were excited about, and we looked at the fine print. It was kind of scary, the information they were just taking and claiming as their own. So we just need to be really careful about that and understanding where it's coming from and making sure that we're kind of upfront about that and understanding all the things that go into that. So lots of cool innovation, lots of opportunities to work across different sectors and really put together some neat things and have opportunities for ourselves and what we're doing, but then also for our students.